The radiator clicked twice. Then it died. I pressed my palm flat against the metal. Cold. Not the kind of cold you get in winter. This was different. This was the kind of cold that settles in and refuses to leave. 11 days of it now. 11 days of ice creeping up the corners of the window like it was trying to steal something. My breath was visible. Small clouds of air hanging in front of me. I was still wearing my work clothes, grey cargo pants stained with warehouse dust, a jacket with a frayed cuff I kept meaning to cut off but never had the time. I'd come home from the overnight shift at 6 in the morning, slept 4 hours on the couch. The bedroom mattress had a spring pushing through. You couldn't sleep there. It was nearly midnight now. I hadn't eaten since noon. A granola bar, something I found in the back of the cabinet. The apartment was one room, plus a kitchenette that barely counted as a kitchen. The walls were beige, the kind of color that makes you feel temporary. That's what I felt like. Temporary. On the floor beside the couch was my daughter, Jordan, 7 years old. She was asleep in a sleeping bag I'd folded into a cushion, under 2 thin blankets and a winter coat turned into a quilt. She had my ex-wife's nose. Small, precise, and her mother's way of pressing her lips together when she was thinking hard about something. She'd been asleep for 2 hours. Before she closed her eyes, she asked me something. "Can we have pancakes in the morning, Daddy?" I said yes. I had $11 in my checking account. I looked at what was left on the shelf above the kitchenette. 1 can of chickpeas I didn't even want to eat. Half a box of crackers, open for 6 days, a jar of peanut butter. The kind where you can see the bottom through the glass, just a ring of brown film left. That was it. That was everything. The refrigerator hadn't worked right in 3 weeks. So there was nothing in it except ketchup and a box of baking soda that I'd given up believing in. I sat on the edge of the couch. The overhead light buzzed. It had been buzzing for weeks. The electric bill was 3 weeks past due. I'd been paying what I could, calling ahead, listening to an automated voice repeat my account number back to me. A cheerful voice that made me want to scream. The gas had been shut off 11 days ago. That's the radiator. That's why my daughter sleeps in a coat. I pulled out my phone. The screen was cracked. Lower left corner. A fracture I'd been ignoring for 4 months because if you tilted it right, it still worked. I opened my contacts. Raymond Chen, college friend, the only person I had left who might lend me $50 without too many questions. He'd called twice in the last month. I hadn't called back, because every conversation would circle around to the same question. How are things going? And I was tired of the answer. I was tired of explaining. Tired of admitting what I'd become. I started typing. "Hey man, I know it's been a while, and I'm sorry about that. I hate asking this. Is there any chance you could lend me $50? Jordan needs groceries. I'm short until Friday." I read it. My jaw tightened. Too honest. Too much like admitting I'd failed at the one job that mattered. I deleted the last sentence. Just until payday. Better. I pressed send, and then I waited. 3 seconds, 10, 20. The message sat there with a single grey check mark. Not delivered. The signal bar showed 1 dot, out of 5. I moved to the window and held the phone up toward the corner where the signal was sometimes stronger. I'd learned this trick weeks ago. Hold the phone near the window. Tilt it left. Wait. Still 1 dot. I stood there for another minute, holding it up, waiting for something to change. For 1 bar to become 2. For that grey check mark to become blue. For the message to be delivered. It didn't. I put the phone face down on the couch, and I pressed my hands together between my knees. I used to be a structural engineer. I understood systems. Load-bearing walls, stress distributions, failure points. What happens when you apply too much pressure to something that wasn't designed to hold it? The whole structure comes down. I thought about the job interview 2 weeks ago. Project management role. Construction firm. Not what I used to do, but it would have been steady. I wore my one decent shirt. White. Still crisp, even though it was 5 years old. I borrowed a tie from the man 2 doors down. I did well in that interview. Or I thought I did. I answered every question clearly. I didn't stumble. I didn't show how desperate I was. I presented myself as someone stable, someone competent, someone worth hiring. The interviewer shook my hand and said they'd be in touch. They didn't. 2 weeks of silence. I thought about the engineering license hanging on my wall in a frame. Still valid for another 8 months. The only credential I had left. The only thing proving I'd once been someone. I thought about Halcyon Systems, the company I started 7 years ago with 2 other men, Daniel and Marcus Farrow. No relation to my friend Raymond. That was always confusing. A small infrastructure consulting firm, 18 months to build to 11 clients. Real reputation. Late nights at a second-hand desk in a rented office that smelled like coffee and hope. I was good at it, not good in the way that sounds impressive. Good in the specific way that mattered. I could walk into a broken system and read it like a person reads a room. Find the cracks, understand why things were falling apart. Fix them. Then came Daniel Farrow. The discovery came on an ordinary Tuesday in April. I was reviewing billing when something didn't match. Numbers in the wrong column. Payment records for work that never happened. Shell companies. Multiple shell companies. Daniel had been stealing from clients while my name was on the contracts. My name meant I was responsible. My name meant I was guilty. The lawsuits came first, then the settlements, then the license investigation. I was cleared, eventually. But cleared isn't the same as vindicated. My business was gone. My savings were gone. My wife was gone. She left 8 months after Halcyon collapsed. She said it wasn't about the money. She said the man she married had disappeared, that she didn't recognize the person sitting in his place anymore. I thought she was probably right. I'd been holding the weight of it for so long that I'd become the weight itself. Jordan had stayed with me. That was the one thing that went my way. The phone buzzed. I grabbed it. A message from an unknown number. "Where are you?" I stared at it. The number wasn't Raymond's. My chest tightened. I'd misdialed or mistapped. The cracked screen had sent my message to a stranger. I almost typed back, "Sorry, wrong number." But then I heard Jordan shift in her sleep. A small sound, like a question. And I understood something about myself in that moment. I was past the point of pretending. I typed back, "I'm sorry, I sent that to the wrong person. Please ignore it." I hit send. 30 seconds later, another message. "I didn't ignore it. Where are you?" And then, Natasha Sterling. Nexus Capital. My hand went cold. Nexus Capital. Everyone had heard of them. A fintech company that had somehow become something like a household name. The CEO's name was Natasha Sterling. And I just texted her by accident asking for money. The odds of that didn't make sense. One misdialed digit reaching someone specific out of billions of phone numbers in the world. It felt impossible. But here it was. The phone in my hand. The message from Natasha Sterling, CEO of Nexus Capital, asking where I was. I typed back, "I'm sorry, I really did text the wrong number. I don't know anyone named Natasha Sterling." The response came immediately. "You do now. Where are you?" I sat in the dark apartment, holding a phone that cost $300 3 years ago and had been cracked for 4 months. And I did something I'd never done before. I told the truth to a stranger. 1847 Calvert Street, apartment 4B, West Baltimore. "I'm sorry about the message. It was meant for someone else. I can't repay whatever time I've wasted." I sent it. The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Someone was reading my location. Someone was deciding what to do with it. Then the message came through. "I'm coming to you." I read that 3 times. At midnight? To West Baltimore? To an apartment where a man who'd texted her by accident for $50 lived with his 7-year-old daughter? I typed, "You don't have to do that." Her response came back instantly. "I'm not offering. I'm coming. Address confirmed?" I sent it again. Like that would change anything. Like I could stop her if I wanted to. I didn't want to. I looked at Jordan, still asleep, still safe, still unaware that something was about to shift. At 11:15 p.m., she texted, "I'm on my way." For the next 30 minutes, I sat on that couch and tried to understand what was happening. Who shows up at midnight to meet a stranger? Who just decides to drive to West Baltimore because someone texted them by accident? At 11:47 p.m., I'm outside. I stood up. My heart was moving fast. I checked on Jordan one more time. Still breathing. Still safe. Then I walked downstairs. Chapter 2. The Woman in the Coat. The lobby was empty. Dark. My footsteps echoed on cracked tile as I pushed open the door to the street. The cold hit me immediately. The kind of cold that makes you understand why Jordan had asked about somewhere warmer. A black Tesla was parked in front of the building. Engine running. Interior light on. I'd never seen a car that expensive in this neighborhood. The door opened. She stepped out. Black winter coat. The kind that costs more than my rent. Dark hair pulled back tight. Late 30s, maybe early 40s. She moved like someone who'd never doubted that the world would arrange itself for her. She looked at me across the cold street. Her expression was impossible to read. Not kind, not unkind, precise. Like she was cataloguing me. "Marcus Johnson?" I nodded. "Natasha Sterling." She didn't offer to shake my hand. She just walked past me toward the building. "Let's go inside." We walked up 3 flights of stairs in silence. I became hyper-aware of things I'd stopped noticing. The water stain on the 3rd floor ceiling. The missing number on the 2nd floor landing. The radiator that didn't work at all. I opened the door to 4B. She stepped inside. And she stopped. She didn't say anything. She just stood there, looking at everything. The couch, the sleeping bag, Jordan breathing under her coat, the empty shelves, the darkness. She took off her coat. Underneath was a suit, a real suit, the kind that probably cost more than I made in a month. Just the jacket alone would be over $2,000. A diamond watch on her wrist. Not flashy, but unmistakably real, unmistakably expensive. The kind of quiet wealth that made everything around it look smaller. She sat on the edge of the couch, without asking. "What do you need right now?" My throat was tight. I said, "I can't accept this. I don't know you." Natasha didn't argue. "You will. But first, your daughter needs to eat tomorrow. Let's solve that first. She pulled out her phone. Her fingers moved across the screen like this was simple. Like moving money was just another task. I'm transferring $500 to your account. Use it for what your daughter needs. We can talk about everything else tomorrow. I wanted to say no. I wanted to say I didn't need her help. But Jordan was sleeping on a floor in a cold apartment, and I had $11. I couldn't say no. I said, I can't. You can. She had a particular tone. Not unkind, just certain. You texted a stranger at midnight asking for $50 so your daughter could eat. Not for yourself, for her. That tells me everything about your priorities. She stood up. She put her coat back on. She looked at Jordan sleeping on the floor. And something in her face shifted. Not softness exactly, but something like recognition. Her name? Jordan. Beautiful name. She'll eat tomorrow. You'll both sleep warm. And tomorrow morning, you're going to tell me what you actually do for work. She walked to the door. Get some sleep. We have a lot to talk about. Then she was gone. Her footsteps faded down the hallway. The building was silent again. I pulled out my phone. Checked the account. $500. Transferred. Real. Confirmed. I looked at my daughter sleeping in her coat. I looked at the radiator that didn't work. I looked at the empty shelves, and I sat down on the couch and felt something break open in my chest. Gratitude and terror and something that tasted like hope. I didn't sleep that night. I sat watching Jordan sleep. Watching the money sit in my account like it might disappear when morning came. At 3 a.m., I checked the balance again. Still there. Still real. When Jordan woke up at 6:30 a.m., the first thing she said was, Daddy, can we have those pancakes? I said, yeah, baby, we can have pancakes. Part 2. The collision and the job. Chapter 3. The interrogation. The call came at 8:47 a.m. While I was washing breakfast dishes, my hands were submerged in warm water. Warm water. Which was still somehow surprising. My phone rang. Unknown caller. I dried my hands and answered. No hello from her, just, did you sleep? No. Good, I need to ask you some questions about what you do for work. Not over the phone. Can you meet me at 10? She sent an address. Downtown, an office building. The kind with a marble lobby. Security checkpoints. I told her Jordan needed to go to school. She replied with the name of a daycare center, a good one, and said the bill was handled. I tried to argue. She cut me off. The daycare center has already been paid through the end of the month. Get Jordan ready. Someone will pick her up at 8:45. Be at the downtown office at 10 a.m. The line went dead. I stood holding the phone. A stranger had just arranged my childcare. A woman I'd met 8 hours earlier. A woman I'd only known because a cracked screen misfired a number by 1 digit. It should have felt like an invasion. Instead, it felt like relief. Chapter 4. The building. At 8:55 a.m., I walked into the lobby of the Nexus Capitol building. The elevator climbed. 38. My stomach clenched as the doors opened. The space was exactly what I expected and nothing like what I'd imagined. Glass everywhere, open floor plans, the kind of modern that cost millions to build. People in clothes that cost more than my monthly rent. Moving with certainty, like they'd never questioned their right to be exactly where they were. Natasha was waiting at her office door. The office had a wall of windows, the entire city spread below. From up here, Baltimore looked beautiful, controlled, ordered, like the struggle down there didn't exist. Sit! It wasn't unfriendly, it was just a statement of fact. I sat in a chair that probably cost more than my couch. She opened a file on her computer, studied the screen. Then she looked at me. The Carlisle Infrastructure Project, 4 years ago. You were the junior engineer on a team that identified corruption in a municipal water system. My chest tightened. How do you know about that? I read the audit. Your name was barely on the report, but I could see it was you who did the real work. You saw something the senior engineers didn't. Something that mattered. She turned the monitor toward me. My name was there. Small. Barely visible. One of 5 names on a page of dozens. I was lucky. I happened to be looking at the wrong. You looked at what didn't fit. That's not luck. That's a particular kind of intelligence. The kind that sees systems the way other people see problems. You look at what's broken, and you understand why it broke. She closed that file, opened another one. Halcyon Systems, infrastructure consulting firm. You started it 7 years ago with 2 partners, built it to 11 clients. Real reputation. Then one of your partners committed fraud, and everything collapsed. How do you know all this? I pay people to find information. She said it like it was the most obvious thing in the world, especially about people I'm looking for. Looking for? There's a difference. Looking into someone and looking for them. I was looking for you. She stood up, walked to the window. That's where I grew up. She pointed to a neighborhood below. 9 blocks from here. But it might as well have been another country. My mother worked 3 jobs. My father left when I was 4. I lived in an apartment that smelled like cooking and frustration and the understanding that the world was not designed for people like us. She turned back to face me. At 14, I made a decision. I was going to build something that didn't smell like that apartment. Something that didn't feel like failure. Something that was mine. Not because I was ashamed, because I understood that the alternative was to accept the version of my life that had already been written. She walked back to her desk. I have a problem.
Nexus Capital has a problem. We've grown very quickly. And in that growth, we've built infrastructure systems that are vulnerable, fragile, dangerous. I need someone to look at those systems the way you looked at the Carlisle project. Someone who can see what's broken and tell me the truth about it. Are you interested? I said, I don't have credentials. My license is still valid. I checked. You passed the investigation. You were cleared. Your partner was guilty. You were not. Your license is clean. That's not the same as having a reputation. No, but your daughter needs to eat tomorrow. And the day after that, you need steady income. I need someone I can trust. This seems like a useful arrangement. Why would you trust me? You don't know me. She leaned back in her chair. I know you asked for $50 to feed your daughter. Not for yourself. I know you could have lied about what happened with Halcyon, and you didn't. I know you saw something broken in a system, and you reported it, even though it cost you everything. She paused. I know that at midnight, you texted a stranger for help. Not for yourself, for her. That tells me that when you're desperate, when you're scared, when you have nothing left to lose, you still choose her first. That's integrity, real integrity, the kind that doesn't disappear when the stakes get high. She stood up. What's the job? Chief Infrastructure Officer. Interim contract? 6 months, 85,000 base salary. You report to me. You have access to everything. You tell me what's broken. Then we fix it. I felt the world tilting. I felt the weight of 6 years of falling lifting slightly. Something dangerous, the beginning of hope. That's not a real offer? It is. She had the certainty of someone who didn't make fake offers. I don't make fake offers. Do you want the job? I said yes. Chapter 5. The first week Monday morning. I walked into the Nexus building wearing a suit that had been tailored to fit me in a way my clothes had never fitted before. The suit cost $1,100. I tried to argue about it. Natasha had given me a look that suggested argument wasn't an option. It was navy blue. It fit perfectly. It made me look like someone important, like someone who belonged in a building like this. I wasn't sure if I believed it. The infrastructure team was waiting at a conference table. 12 people. Most of them were white. All of them were watching me walk in. They were reading me, calculating something. Natasha didn't introduce me gently. This is Marcus Johnson. He's our new Chief Infrastructure Officer. He's going to be solving the problems you've been ignoring for the last 8 months. Listen to him. She stood up, and she left. And I watched something shift. Skepticism becoming curiosity. Curiosity becoming something like respect. Within my first week, I found 3 critical vulnerabilities in our payment processing system. Problems that could compromise client data. Problems that could destroy the company if they were exploited. I wrote a report. I sent it to Natasha. I waited. Her response came back in 30 seconds. Come to my office. I knocked on the door frame. Closed the door. I did. Walk me through these vulnerabilities. I did, for 20 minutes, without interruption. When I finished, Natasha was quiet. My entire team missed these. It wasn't said with anger. It was said with clarity, like understanding. They were trained to look for specific problems, not for problems that don't fit the training. Why did you find them? Because I'm not looking for what I'm supposed to find. I'm looking for what doesn't fit. Systems are like people. They break in predictable ways when something stops working the way it was designed to. Natasha nodded. Good. Stay curious. Stay suspicious. This is your domain now. Nobody moves on infrastructure without going through you. Understood? Understood. I turned to leave. Marcus, he stopped. You're going to feel like an outsider. You're going to feel like people are watching you, wondering if you belong. You belong. Prove it to yourself, not to them. That matters more. 3 weeks in. Natasha took me to lunch, not the company cafeteria, an actual restaurant, a private members-only club overlooking the harbor, the kind of place where the doorman recognized her by name. They were seated at a table by the window. The menu was leather-bound. Wine pairings were suggested with deference. Marcus looked at the menu and calculated. Everything was expensive. He ordered a salad, the cheapest thing, $30 for leaves and dressing. Natasha watched him do it. She didn't comment. Not then, during lunch. Her phone rang. She looked at it, and then she silenced it. Not dismissing the call, actually silencing it, showing respect to Marcus. Halfway through the meal. You know what people get wrong about me? They think I'm kind. People call me cold because I'm not kind. But I'm not cold either. I'm precise. That's different. How is it different? Precision means I respect your time. I respect your ability. I don't waste either. Kindness wastes both. It offers sympathy when it should offer support. It offers comfort when it should offer truth. I'm not interested in either of those things. I'm interested in building something real. Something that lasts. Something that matters, Marcus asked. Why are you telling me this? Because you're starting to be afraid of me.
You're being careful. That's good instinct, but it's limiting your thinking. Stop being afraid. Start being careful instead. There's a difference. What's the difference? Fear paralyzes you. Caution focuses you. Stop paralyzing yourself. I hired you because you're good. Stop questioning that decision. Start trusting it. The waiter brought the check.
Natasha paid without looking at it. They walked out of the restaurant into the November sun, and Marcus realized something had shifted. She wasn't offering charity. She was offering partnership. She was offering to build something with him. Not something for him. Something with him. That shift changed everything. Part 3. The Hidden Hunt and Power Reversal. Chapter 6. The Revelation. 6 weeks into the job, Marcus was working late on a system upgrade. The office was empty except for the night cleaning crew. The city was dark outside the windows, reflecting off the harbor below. He was deep in code, in the way that made everything else disappear. The way that made him feel like himself. Like he was good at something. Like his presence mattered. Natasha appeared in his workspace at 10 p.m. She didn't knock. Do you have a minute? They went to her office. She closed the door. She'd never closed the door before. Marcus's heart rate increased. Something was changing. Something was about to shift. Natasha sat at her desk. She looked at him directly. The night you texted me. It wasn't random. My chest went still. What do you mean? The number you texted. My personal line. It's not listed anywhere. It's given to a specific set of people. Professional networks, private channels, encrypted servers. The odds of reaching me specifically by misdialing by one digit is 0.003%. It was a coincidence. Maybe. Or maybe we need to talk about what happened before the coincidence. She pulled up a file, turned the screen toward him. The Carlisle Infrastructure Project. The audit. His name barely visible on the report. The findings that had gotten him noticed, even though he'd tried to stay invisible. The Carlisle Project. You were junior engineer. The senior engineers wanted to ignore the corruption. They wanted to sign off on a system that was breaking. You didn't let them. That took courage. And it cost you your career. That's not... I read the audit 4 years ago. I knew what I was seeing. I knew it was you. She leaned forward slightly. I knew because I'd been looking at infrastructure problems my whole life. And I recognize when someone sees them the way I do. I spent 2 years looking for you. Investigators, public records, professional databases, university alumni associations. I was looking for the person who had the integrity to see something broken and not look away. Marcus stood up. That's manipulation? Yes. And I'd do it again. You could have just found me. You're powerful. You could have... I could have. She stood up, walked to the window, but I needed to see something. I needed to understand what you'd ask for when you were desperate. Who you'd ask, how you'd ask. I needed to understand your actual character, not the character that shows up in job interviews, not the character that shows up in recommendations. The real one, the one that emerges when everything is stripped away. She turned back to face him. Most people ask for help when they're in trouble. They ask for money, or favors, or connections. They ask for things that help themselves. You texted a stranger at midnight for your daughter. Not for yourself, for her. You risked judgment, you risked rejection, you risked danger. To ask for her benefit. That told me everything I needed to know. Why? Why did you need to know that? She walked back to her chair. Sat down. Looked at him directly. Because I was looking for someone with integrity under pressure. That's rare. Most people don't have it. You do. But I needed to see it myself. Not read about it in a report. I needed to know that when you're desperate, when you're scared, when you have nothing left to lose, you still choose what's right. That's not something that appears on a resume. She paused. I found you, and I tested you, and you passed every test. You found vulnerabilities in our system that could have destroyed us, and you reported them. You pushed back on my decisions when you thought I was wrong. You created something real here. You didn't just take the job and be grateful. You came in here and actually changed this place. She stood up. Now you're going to make a choice. You can stay for the paycheck. 12 more months of steady income. You can fix your apartment. You can send Jordan to the art camp. You can build something stable. Or you can stay because you believe in what we're building here, because you want to be part of something that matters. She looked at him directly. I need you to understand something. I didn't hire you because you're a diversity hire. I didn't hire you because I felt bad about your situation. I didn't hire you for charity. I hired you because you're the best person for this job, and I want you to believe that. I want you to stop questioning whether you belong here. Because you belong here. Not because I say so. Because you've already proven it. Marcus felt something shift in his chest. Something he'd been holding tightly for years. Something that had made him smaller and harder and afraid. What do you want from me, right now? I want you to go home to your daughter. We'll talk about the rest tomorrow. Chapter 7. The permanent offer the next morning.
Natasha sent a message. Permanent position. Chief Infrastructure Officer. 240,000 base.
Equity package. Start Monday. Marcus stared at that message. It was an insane offer. Life-changing. Impossible. His instinct was to refuse. Pride, fear, disbelief. But he called her instead. Why? He said. You could hire anyone in the world. Why me? I hired you because you're the best, and because you have nothing to lose, which means you'll tell me the truth. And what about this? What about everything else? What about the fact that you've been hunting me for 2 years? What about the fact that you set up a situation to test my character? We're not ready for that question yet. Take the job first, then we decide. She hung up. Marcus sat in his truck in the warehouse parking lot. He understood that his life was about to become something entirely different. He thought about the apartment, the radiator that didn't work. He thought about Jordan asking about somewhere warmer. He thought about the moment Natasha had shown up at midnight. He thought about the $500. He said yes. Part 4. The Real Work and Emotional Shifts. Chapter 8. The Catastrophe. His first month as Chief Infrastructure Officer. Marcus discovered something catastrophic. The vulnerability he'd initially found was the tip of something much worse. A security breach that affected millions in client data. A failure that could destroy the company. He discovered it on a Wednesday afternoon. Reviewing data from a system upgrade. The anomalies started appearing. At first he thought it was a glitch. But the more he looked, the more he understood that it wasn't a glitch. It was evidence of a fundamental compromise in Nexus's infrastructure. His hands were shaking when he finished running the diagnostics. He went to Natasha's office. He closed the door. He told her everything. Show me. That's all she said. No defensiveness, no fear, just show me. They spent 8 hours reviewing the data, sitting in her office with the city dark below them, going through vulnerability assessment after vulnerability assessment. Natasha didn't try to hide anything. She didn't minimize anything. She just looked at it clearly. She asked the hard questions. She wanted to understand the depth of the problem. When they finished, how bad? Marcus said, bad enough to sink you. Bad enough that you need to notify regulators. Bad enough that you need to inform clients. Bad enough that your stock will tank. Probably by 30, maybe 40%. Natasha nodded slowly. She was quiet for a long moment. Then that's what we do. It will destroy your company. Everything you've built will survive. Because the alternative is to hide it and wait for someone else to find it. And when they find it, which they will, the destruction will be complete. I'm not going to do that. She walked over to the window, looked out at the city. My whole life, I've been trying to build something that didn't smell like failure. Something that was real, something that mattered. I'm not going to compromise that now. Not even for money. Not even for everything I've built. She turned back to face him. We fix this. We tell the truth. We deal with the consequences and we survive it because we did the right thing. Are you with me? Marcus said yes. She walked into a board meeting the next day. She presented the vulnerability. She explained what had happened. She announced a plan to fix everything and notify everyone affected. She didn't sugarcoat it. She didn't try to minimize the damage. She just told the truth. The board members pushed back. They argued for secrecy, damage control, protecting the stock price, strategies that would prioritize Nexus Capital's financial interests over their clients' interests. Natasha said, we fix this, or we don't deserve to exist. That's not negotiable. The next 3 weeks were chaos. Client notifications, regulatory reports, lawsuits filed, insurance claims, stock tanking, media coverage. It was a bloodbath. Nexus Capital lost $20 million in market value in a single week. The stock price dropped 43%, and through all of it, Natasha never wavered. She came in every morning. She made every call. She took every interview. She explained to every client and investor and regulator exactly what had happened and what Nexus was doing to fix it. By the end of 3 weeks, something remarkable happened. Clients started staying. Not all of them, but enough. More than enough. They understood that Natasha had chosen integrity over profit. And they understood what that meant. It meant they could trust her. It meant her company would prioritize their security over her own wealth. It meant something fundamental had changed. New clients started approaching Nexus, not despite the scandal, because of it, because the scandal proved something. By the end of the quarter, Nexus Capital was worth more than it had been before the vulnerability. The company had survived. The company had integrity. The company had proven that truth-telling was actually a competitive advantage. Marcus realized something. Natasha's power wasn't in her money. It was in her unshakable conviction about what mattered. It was in her willingness to lose everything, rather than compromise on integrity. That was real power, the kind that changed things fundamentally. Chapter 9. The Personal Moment. On Jordan's 8th birthday, Natasha arrived at Marcus's apartment, the new apartment, the one with heat that worked, A radiator that didn't click ominously. She had a gift. It was wrapped. Inside was a custom art set, expensive, but not ostentatiously. Specific brushes, specific paints, specific paper for watercolor work. More importantly, Natasha sat at the kitchen table with Jordan and asked about her drawings. She asked about the mantis shrimp. She asked with genuine curiosity, not performative interest. She asked the kinds of questions that showed she'd actually read the book. Jordan showed her a sketch. She'd been working on it for a week. It was intricate, beautiful. It captured the specific geometry of a mantis shrimp's eyes, the way the light reflected off the carapace, the way the appendages moved, the work of an artist who understood the subject deeply. Natasha studied it. She didn't offer false praise. How long did this take? 3 days. What took the longest? The eyes. They're not regular eyes. They see different colors than we do. Most people just draw eyes. But mantis shrimp see ultraviolet light and polarized light. So their eyes are actually different, not just bigger. Different. Natasha nodded. That's the part that's hardest to draw. The thing that's actually different. Most people just draw eyes. You drew her actual eyes. Jordan looked at her with the intensity of a 7-year-old who had just been understood by another human being. Later, after Natasha left, Marcus found Jordan at the kitchen table. She'd written something at the top of a notebook page. Things that are better now. Under it, in her careful second grade printing. My room, heat, books, art camp, daddy happy again, Natasha. Marcus read it 3 times. He sat down in a chair, and he had to breathe through something tight in his chest. His daughter had put Natasha on a list of things that were better. Not things that Natasha had given her, but the presence of Natasha herself. The fact of knowing her. The fact of being known by her. Chapter 10. The partnership. 3 months into the permanent job, Marcus and Natasha had developed a rhythm. They worked late several nights a week. They'd review code together, talk about infrastructure, talk about the business, talk about the industry and the future, and what they were building together. Sometimes they'd just sit in her office, with the city spread below them, and not talk at all. Just exist in the same space. Just understand that something between them had fundamentally changed. One night, Natasha said, "You've stopped being afraid of me. Should I be?" "No. But you notice things now that you didn't when you were afraid. That's the difference between respect and fear. Fear makes you small. Fear makes you defensive. Respect makes you clear. Respect makes you expansive." She was sitting at her desk. Marcus was sitting in the chair across from her. Between them was a particular kind of tension. Not hostile, not aggressive, but charged with something neither of them had named yet. Natasha said, "We're not ready for this yet, but I need you to know I'm aware." Aware of what? That this isn't just work anymore, that something has changed between us, that we're building something that's bigger than infrastructure, or client systems, or quarterly reports. She stood up, walked to the window. Marcus left her office. But he understood that she'd just confirmed what he already knew. Something between them had shifted from work into territory they weren't prepared to navigate. Not yet, not while everything else was still being built. Part 5. The Crisis and the Choice. Chapter 11. The Threat. The internal memo appeared on a Monday morning. Subject: Concerns about recent hiring practices at Nexus Capital. Marcus read it once, then he read it again. The language was careful, measured, devastating. The memo alleged that Marcus had been promoted unfairly, that he lacked credentials for his position, that his advancement was a diversity hire, nothing more, that Natasha was using progressive hiring practices as a smokescreen for what was actually incompetence in her infrastructure decisions, that the security breach that had been discovered and publicized was evidence of fundamental failure. In his department, it was vicious. It was designed to undermine both of them. And it was written by David Whitmore, the former chief technology officer, a white man from an old money background who had been let go 6 months before Marcus joined, because he'd opposed the security protocols that had ultimately saved the company. The memo spread through Nexus like a virus. It leaked to investors, to competitors, to industry publications within hours. People were questioning whether Marcus deserved his position, whether Natasha had made a mistake, whether Nexus's recent success was actually just good PR, covering actual incompetence. The narrative was being built, brick by brick, to undermine everything Marcus had accomplished. It was being built to suggest that his success wasn't due to his competence or his integrity, but due to his identity, due to affirmative action, due to Natasha's guilt, or her desire to appear progressive. It was designed to make him smaller. Marcus's first instinct was to step down, protect Natasha, take the blame, let her company move forward without the baggage of his name attached to its leadership. He walked into her office and told her, "No," that's all she said. "No, you're not stepping down. If I step down, the narrative changes. If you step down, you prove them right. You prove that you don't deserve your position, that you're not confident in your own ability, that you were always going to be a charity case, that the only reason you succeeded is because someone else chose you." She stood up, walked to the window.
You found every vulnerability in our system. You told me the truth. When it cost millions, you've built infrastructure that's now the most secure in the industry. You didn't get here because you're a diversity hire. You got here because you're the best person for this job. She turned back to face him. We're going to fight this, and you're going to prove it. Chapter 12. The Investigation and Vindication. Natasha hired external auditors, real auditors, the kind that couldn't be influenced or pressured. She opened every file, she provided every email, she documented every decision Marcus had made. She asked the auditors to evaluate whether his promotion was merit-based or diversity-based. She asked them to assess his actual contributions to Nexus Capital. She asked them to determine whether the vulnerabilities he'd found were real or imagined. She asked them to investigate whether David Whitmore's allegations had any merit. The auditors spent 3 weeks reviewing everything. Their conclusion was unambiguous. Marcus was qualified beyond question. His promotion was merit-based. His contributions had saved the company millions. The security vulnerability he'd discovered would have destroyed Nexus if left unfixed. The vulnerabilities he'd identified in the payment processing system were sophisticated and significant. His judgment had been consistently correct. His work had been consistently excellent. The allegations were retaliation. David Whitmore had filed them because he was angry. Angry about being terminated. Angry that Marcus had been promoted to a position Whitmore had expected to advance into himself. Angry that Natasha had chosen an engineer from a poor background over an engineer from a privileged one. His allegations had no basis in fact. Nexus published the findings in a public statement. David Whitmore was terminated. News outlets picked up the story. By week's end, Marcus's name was being mentioned in industry publications as the engineer who had caught catastrophic vulnerabilities, who stood by his integrity, who was willing to be honest about risk, even when it cost money. The conversation had shifted. The narrative had been inverted. Instead of being positioned as a diversity hire, Marcus was being positioned as someone who had proven his worth through merit, someone who had sacrificed for integrity, someone who had made Nexus Capital better. Other companies called better offers, more money, no controversy, cleaner narratives. Companies that wanted to poach him from Natasha, that wanted to use his success at Nexus as a springboard for their own. Marcus told Natasha, I could leave, you know that, better money, cleaner narrative. Natasha said, you could. The question is, where do you want to build something? Marcus understood. He wasn't just solving problems, he was building something with her, a company, a partnership, a life.
Chapter 13. The Unspoken Conversation. That night, they were alone in her office. The city was dark below them. The cleaning crew had gone home. The building was empty except for security. Natasha said, I found you because I knew you were the right engineer. I kept you because you became the right partner. And now? Now you choose what comes next. I'm done hunting. I'm done testing. I'm just here, waiting for you to be ready. Ready for what? For the thing we've both been not naming. Marcus walked to her. For the first time, he chose her. Without defense, without doubt, without fear or calculation. Just a simple choice. He walked to her. And they didn't speak, and they didn't need to. They sat together, hands touching, understanding finally confirmed. Jordan was at her mother's for the weekend, for the first time in months. Marcus's life had space for something beyond survival. And work. Natasha asked, What do you want now? Marcus answered, To not be afraid, to build something real. To have you stay, Natasha said, I'm staying.
Part 6. The Resolution and Justice.
Chapter 14. 6 months later.
The apartment had 2 bedrooms now. One had a window that looked out over the harbor. Jordan's room. The walls were painted a soft green. There was a real bed. No broken springs. There was an art desk. Posters of deep-sea creatures. The radiator worked. The heat was always on. Marcus sometimes woke up in Natasha's bed and couldn't quite believe the rooms around him were real. Jordan had turned 8. She'd made friends. She drew constantly. She laughed, without calculating whether she was allowed to. She moved through the world with the ease of a child who knew she was safe, who knew her basic needs would be met, who didn't have to worry about being hungry or cold. Marcus was Chief Infrastructure Officer of Nexus Capital. He'd hired his own team, 5 engineers, 3 of them from underprivileged backgrounds. He'd created a scholarship fund for black engineers entering fintech companies, funded by Natasha, managed by him. He'd spoken at 3 industry conferences about infrastructure integrity. He'd published a technical paper being used in university engineering programs. He'd become a voice in his field, not just for his competence, but for his message. That integrity could be a competitive advantage. That telling the truth could build something real. The radiator worked, the refrigerator was full, nobody worried about the electric bill, but the thing that surprised Marcus most was that none of it felt like it was happening to him. It felt like he was choosing it. Every day. He chose to show up at Nexus. Every day, he chose the work. Every day, he chose Natasha. Every day, he chose to believe that he was worthy of being chosen. By her. By his team. by the industry that had once rejected him. Every day was a choice, and he was choosing to build something. Chapter 15, the conference speech. 3 months before, at the annual engineering conference, Marcus had been invited to speak. The invitation had come from the conference organizers. They'd read his paper, they'd heard about his work at Nexus, they wanted him to speak about infrastructure integrity. The speech was titled, Infrastructure Integrity, the True Cost of Speaking Truth. He stood on stage, in front of 500 engineers, and told them about Carlisle, about the water system that was breaking. Because someone had made a convenient decision, instead of a smart one. He told them about the moment he realized what was happening, and the choice he made to report it. He told them about halcyon systems collapsing, because someone he trusted had chosen profit over honesty. He told them about the lawsuits, the license investigations, the way everything he'd built fell apart. He told them about showing up at Nexus with nothing, about being given something, but only because he was willing to tell the truth, about what was broken, about discovering a security breach, so significant it could have destroyed the company, about recommending that Natasha disclose it publicly, at tremendous cost, he said. We tell ourselves that integrity doesn't have market value. We tell ourselves that cutting corners is practical. We tell ourselves that truth-telling is naive. He paused. We tell ourselves that people who report problems are troublemakers, whistleblowers, people who don't understand how the world works. But I want to tell you something different. I want to tell you that integrity is the only thing that has lasting market value. I want to tell you that telling the truth is the only practical strategy. I want to tell you that people who are willing to speak honestly, even when it costs everything, those people build things that last. Those people build things that matter. He talked about the security breach at Nexus, about the choice to disclose it, about the cost and the recovery, and what it had meant to choose truth over profit. He talked about his daughter sleeping on a floor in a cold apartment because he had nothing to give her. He talked about a stranger showing up at midnight because she valued integrity enough to spend years looking for it. He talked about being tested and questioned and made to prove his worth. He talked about being seen, really seen, by someone who had the power to help him and chose to do it, not out of charity, but because she recognized something in him that mattered, that his character mattered, that his integrity mattered, that he mattered. After the speech, former colleagues approached him, people who hadn't believed in him when he was falling, people who had questioned his rise at Nexus, people who had suggested that his success was due to affirmative action, or luck, or anyone's help but his own. Now they wanted to know his secret. Now they wanted to work with him. Marcus was gracious, but not warm. He remembered who doubted. He understood that doubt was human, but he also understood that some people had chosen to help him when he had nothing, and some people had chosen not to. That difference mattered. Chapter 16, the scholarship impact. The Marcus Johnson Infrastructure Excellence Scholarship had been active for 8 months. It had funded 5 young black engineers entering fintech companies, 5 people who might not have had the opportunity, 5 people who were now positioned to build careers in an industry that had been closed to them. Marcus sat at his desk, reviewing the first cohort of scholarship recipients, reading their backgrounds, understanding their stories, seeing himself in each of them. The hunger, the determination, the specific kind of intelligence that comes from having to figure out how broken things work, because broken was all you had. One of them, a young woman named Amelia from Baltimore, from the same neighborhood where Marcus had grown up. Actually, she'd written him a letter. Mr. Johnson, I got the scholarship because of you, because someone believed that I was worth investing in, because someone looked at my background and saw potential instead of liability. I want you to know that I'm building infrastructure that matters, that I'm looking for problems that don't fit, that I'm teaching other people what I've learned about seeing what's broken and not looking away. I want you to know that what you did matters, not just for you, for all of us who come after you. Thank you. Marcus read it 3 times. He thought about the cold apartment. He thought about texting a stranger. He thought about the moment everything changed because someone decided to look for him. He understood now that his life wasn't just his own. His success meant something to other people. His story meant something. His choice to tell the truth meant something. Chapter 17, the turning point, winter again. Exactly 2 years after Marcus texted a stranger for $50, Marcus was at Nexus on a Saturday, working on infrastructure code. Jordan was with Natasha, building something in the apartment, building a life, building a future. Natasha found him in his office. She held her phone up. I found something. I finally figured out how your message reached me. On the old phone records, your text hit my personal line because of a data breach. In a telecom routing system, 1 digit off, 2 systems colliding, a 0.003% chance of reaching me specifically. She sat down beside him. She showed him the analysis, the mathematical probability. The impossibility of it all, Marcus asked. So it was luck, Natasha said. Or it was the universe deciding we'd solved enough problems separately. Time to solve something together. She took his hand. Either way, I'm glad you misdialed. I'm glad you texted a stranger at midnight. I'm glad you asked for help when you were desperate, because that led you here, that led you to me, and everything that came after that matters. All of it matters. Marcus squeezed her hand. They sat in the office, with the city dark below them. And he thought about the radiator, in the cold apartment. He thought about Jordan asking about pancakes. He thought about the sleeping bag on the floor. He thought about the moment everything shifted. Because of a single misdialed digit, he thought about luck and structure and the intersection of the two. He thought about the fact that he had something now. Heat, food, work that mattered, love, a daughter who felt safe, a future that extended beyond survival. He thought about the next person who might text a stranger by accident. He thought about what they might find on the other end of that text. He thought about the responsibility he now had, to be the kind of person who answered that call, who looked for integrity in others, who built systems that mattered, who helped people when they were desperate. They walked out of the conference center into the winter air. The city was dark and cold, but it was the kind of cold you could walk through. Not the kind that punished you. Not the kind that made you understand why your daughter asked about somewhere warmer. That cold was gone. It had been gone for 6 months now. And Marcus understood that luck didn't come with apologies. You didn't earn it, you didn't deserve it. You simply existed in the moment when all the systems aligned and made something possible. But once you had luck, you had a choice. You could take it and hide. You could take it and be grateful and small. You could take it and question whether you really deserved it. Or you could take it and build something real. Something that meant when the next person texted a stranger by accident, when the next person was desperate and afraid and hungry and cold, someone would answer. Someone would choose to help. Someone would look for integrity and find it. Marcus had chosen to build. Natasha took his hand as they walked through the city. Jordan was waiting at home. The radiator was working, the refrigerator was full, and tomorrow, there would be another day to build something that mattered. That was the thing that mattered most. Not the money, not the success, not the validation, but the choice, every day. The choice to be the kind of person who answered when someone called. The kind of person who looked for what was broken. The kind of person who told the truth, even when it cost everything. The kind of person who was worthy of being chosen.